Deputy Doherty.
Since the last general election, we've been subjected to the concoction that is the confidence and supply deal between your party and Fianna Fáil. And last night, the Fianna Fáil leader confirmed that he has bent the knee once again and renewed your deal for another year. On the one hand, he's quite happy to come in here and criticise your government week in, week out for your very obvious failings. But on the other hand, he and his party, through the confidence and supply deal, are what are keeping your government in office. And it's a nonsensical position, and we hear some of it again this morning. The confidence and supply deal, when it was cobbled together in 2016, was being heralded as a new beginning of new politics. It has been anything but, Taoiseach. It has proved to be a political con job designed to allow Fianna Fáil the pretence to be in opposition while they are in government in all but name. It has been bad, in my view, for politics, but most important, bad for citizens, and not least the tens of thousands of citizens affected by the housing and homelessness crisis. Taoiseach, rents and house prices are out of control, and they're continuing to rise. We see that time and time again, and I've raised this in this chamber over and over again. It is borne out in the RTP's rent index published this morning, which shows that the national average rent is now standing at €1,122 per month. In Dublin, the average monthly rent is now a staggering €1,620. Not a single affordable home to rent or buy has been delivered by your government over the past 3 years. An entire generation of young people face the prospect of never owning their own home. And under your watch, homelessness has reached unprecedented levels, with 10,000 people homeless, and perhaps more scandalously, 4,000 children will spend their Christmas this year in emergency accommodation. In fact, we know that the real numbers of those homeless is a lot higher, closer to the 13,000 figure, as highlighted by my colleague, Deputy Ona Bryn. And this, Taoiseach, is a scandalous record. But it is one that Fianna Fáil are seemingly happy to endorse. And what have they got in these so-called negotiations? Absolutely nothing. But that isn't surprising, because together you have voted down Sinn Féin's proposals for real rent certainty. You have opposed our proposal to introduce tax relief for renters. You have continuously, along with Fianna Fáil, voted down the Focus Ireland amendment that would stop landlords evicting families into homelessness. Shame on both of you. What we need is real and meaningful action to tackle the housing crisis, Taoiseach. We need a change in direction, and we need that change fast. So now that you have the backing of Fianna Fáil for at least another year, what is your plan to tackle the housing crisis? What is your plan to deal with the spiralling rents and to deal with the fact that many homeless families will now spend their third Christmas in a hotel?
3 minutes.
Well, Deputy, the first thing I can say in relation to the extension of confidence and supply is that it points to the difference between the approach of your party to politics and the approach of my party and the main opposition party, that both recognise that this country is vulnerable right now. We don't know what decisions will be made in Westminster in the coming weeks, but we have recognised that the challenge that we may face as a parliament and as a country in the first quarter of next year and beyond, throughout 2019, is one that will require all of us to work together. And Fianna Fáil have recognised that, to their credit. And they have said that what the country does not need in 2019, in the midst of Brexit preparation, is a general election here. The kind of political uncertainty and carnage that is happening in Westminster right now is not going to be replicated here. Because of responsible politics from the two biggest parties in this country, I'm glad to say. That doesn't mean that Fianna Fáil aren't going to be in opposition, putting us under pressure on housing, on health reform and a whole range of other things. That is already catered for. You may smile, Deputy, but the only contribution that Sinn Féin makes, for example, to the discussion on Brexit right now, is to call for a border poll to make tensions even more acute in Northern Ireland to what they already are. That's your contribution that's supposed to be constructive towards a national challenge that we face right across this island. So I have to say that while confidence and supply is an unusual arrangement, it's difficult for parties that are competitive with each other. It is responding right now to a national challenge that I believe people outside of this House expect us to respond to with maturity and competence. And that is what the extension of confidence supply will be about. It doesn't mean we won't be battling here on a whole range of policy areas, keeping the government under pressure, which is as it should be in this House. But on housing, and we spent a lot of time talking about housing in the context of confidence and supply talks. We have a 5-year housing plan in train. We are meeting targets. We are delivering on output, which is the core problem here, because supply is the problem in the rental market, in the house purchase market, and in social housing and affordable housing. In all of those areas, we have plans that we are taking forward, and we are delivering increases in terms of supply across every sector. And that is as it should be. And we should be kept under pressure and scrutinised in terms of delivery in that area, and so we will be through 2019.
Deputy Doherty.
No doubt, Taoiseach, we will keep you under pressure and we will scrutinise you, because we are the real opposition in this House here. And let me say, when you talk about vulnerability and the carnage, the vulnerable people that I'm talking about are the 4,000 children that are in emergency accommodation. Disgracefully, many of them will wake up on Christmas Day for the third year, Minister, in a hotel. That is the carnage that the confidence and supply have left behind them. Now, I ask you, what are you going to do in terms of spiraling rents? In Dublin, it is now €1,692 more expensive to rent a house in Dublin than it was this time last year. Not a single affordable or cost rental house has been delivered by your government or confidence and supply over the last 3 years. So what this is more of the status quo. What I am asking you, and you talk about proposals, the Focus Ireland amendment was a sensible proposal. It says that landlords who received tax reliefs should not be allowed to evict people into homelessness. Who in God's name could refuse to accept that? I'll tell you who. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. And shame on you, because the people that you shed crocodile tears for, who are in emergency accommodation, have been put into emergency accommodation because you as legislators have failed to accept and do the responsible thing in supporting amendments that have come before this House. So can you give any succour or any comfort to those who can't afford a house, who can't afford their rent, and who are living in emergency accommodation, that anything will change over the next year to year and a half?
To respond, he's 1 minute.
Well, things are changing, Deputy, but I know they need to continue to change quickly. There are far too many families in emergency accommodation. There are far too many children who will be in emergency accommodation, and some of that accommodation isn't as good as it should be in the context of hotel rooms this year. I've recognised that as a housing minister, and I recognise it as a Taoiseach. And we are working night and day to change it. And that is why this year we will supply social housing solutions to over 25,000 people and their families this year. And we will continue to accelerate that. We are dramatically ramping up the delivery of social housing. This year we will provide more than an extra 8,000 social houses across the country through various different mechanisms. Next year it will probably be over 10,000, and the year after approaching 12,000. That's where we're going, and we have a multi-billion euro programme to deliver it. And we are also, and have agreed with Fianna Fáil in relation to an affordable housing programme that we've committed 300 million to as well. So there are actions taking place. Minister Murphy will introduce new legislation too to provide, soon to provide further protections for tenants, to empower the RTB even further. But we know from the RTB's report this week that actually the measures we've taken to date in relation to rent controls are having a positive impact. But we need to build them. No, you don't want to listen to the RTB.
Deputy Doherty and Taoiseach. We're moving on.
We have the highest renting prices.
Deputy Doherty, please, you only get one.
Dublin, and to suggest that
let me quote from the RTB. Let me quote from the RTB, because I'm being accused of misleading the House.
Well, you have to
the RTB says very clearly the results indicate that rent pressure zones are slowing the pace.
We can't. Deputies.
It's 9.5%.
All of you.
Apartments have
Deputy Doherty, please.
12%
Deputy Doherty.
in Dublin.
Deputy Howland, before you, Deputy Howland, can I say to the House that I am implementing standing orders that all of you have agreed to, and 3 minutes is 3 minutes and 1 minute is 1 minute. And there are others who want to raise questions at a later stage, and we'll be running out of time. Deputy